Hey everyone, Caleb with Antique Book Collective, and today I'm getting to you guys with a video that I've been wanting to make and meaning to make for a hot minute, and I just have been sort of brainstorming and mulling over how I wanted to do that. And with that said, this video is titled Go Rural Young Man. I'm sure you guys already know that because you saw the thumbnail and title. But with that said, what am I talking about? So obviously, for those of you guys that have been playing along and might be like 700 years old like me, you've heard the phrase in the past, go west, young man. The reason why people would say that was because the West was the land of opportunity. The West was the land of discovery, of the gold rush, of land that you could get for free from the government with the Homestead Act, which unfortunately is gone and has left a lot of scars because they should have really finished it out and gotten rid of a lot more land than the government did. Now, at least in Oregon, we are stuck with something called checkerboarding, which is the worst thing ever. But with that said, back to the actual focus of this video. Why am I saying go rural? Well, there's not much more you can go west than where we are right now in the world, unless of course there's a whole new world that we don't know about for some weird reason. We've gone through the globe and somehow there's another continent, which there isn't. The rural side of things is sort of the last vestige of opportunity, if you will. I do understand that a lot of people are going to yell at me in the comments and be like, well, those rural towns are so hurting. There's no money and all the main businesses have left. Guys, there is opportunity everywhere. There is still opportunity in the cities. However, for people like myself, and I'm sure a lot of other people, you go to the city. In fact, I was just at Home Depot today chatting with someone. You go to the city, or you're even in the city's like outer reaches, and it's just not safe anymore. Meanwhile, if you go rural, there's not as many people going around robbing people in broad daylight, which you see in the cities a lot nowadays, and a whole lot of other very, very bad criminal activity things, which you just do not see in rural areas. So from a safety standpoint alone, going rural can be a very good choice for a whole lot of people. However, that's not necessarily the entire point of this video, but it is a very important point that I do want to make, especially for people that are looking to start their own families. You do want to make sure that your family is going to be somewhere safe, make sure the schools aren't going to ruin your kids, all that sort of stuff. But with that said, why am I talking about the rural areas being the land of opportunity? Well, there's a lot of reasons for why going rural is a very good opportunity for a whole lot of people. I know you guys are probably thinking, well, Caleb, you don't live rural just yet. You said you live by Portland. Yes, I understand. I've been looking at land out in rural areas for a hot minute. It is on the docket. I will be moving out there. Don't worry. I'm not just saying this to say this. But between my efforts of looking in these rural areas and also just, I didn't start looking rural and then make my plan fit into that. My plan sort of made it so I had to go rural in order to have things succeed for me. So with that being said, I've shared in this channel many times before, I do my antique book business. Imagine that, I do it online. I'm not a bookstore, so I don't need to have 10,000 people walking by my storefront every single day for me to stay in business. I can be in the middle of nowhere for my business. Okay, that's fine and dandy, Caleb, but what about sourcing for your books? You go to estate sales. You're not going to have estate sales in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, I'm aware of that. However, as I've shared a million other times on my channel, I'm not buying all these books in downtown Portland. I avoid downtown Portland like the plague. In fact, excuse me for a second, let me just look. The only books I've bought behind me out of all these that are actually in Portland jurisdiction is on the outskirts of Portland. So those, it's on the east side of the river and far enough east that you're not dealing with really Portlandy stuff. A lot of these Bible books are also from the eastern side of Portland. That's pretty far east. None of them are actually downtown. I do not go downtown. There is, for me, zero opportunity there because the cost of buying books, instead of paying $1 a book, like I did literally for this one right here, paid $1 for this. Instead of paying $1, these places are legitimately asking for used books $5 to $10 for their books. Meanwhile, I can go out in the sticks where I actually enjoy the people, where I actually can get a deal, all that sort of stuff. I'm buying these books for 25 cents to $1 all day long, every day. And of course, there's not going to be as many estate sales, but the estate sales that I do find are, by and large, a whole lot better quality. I find that in Portland, unless you're getting something that's actually from like someone who actually did a more brain-intensive career in their life and was a reader their entire life, so affluent areas as well, those are generally full of more valuable books. By and large, if anyone has any books, they're going to have like 10 or 50 fiction books. Fiction books, if you guys are resellers like me, you know, don't usually fetch the highest possible price. Of course, some of them do, but most of them don't. Most of them are New York Times bestsellers, which means they printed 705 trillion of them, and everyone has them, and no one needs to buy another one. Therefore, the price is not going to be $100 a book. They're going to be 100 pennies a book. These things are basically worthless. And again, that's just because so many people in the city are the more extroverted people. Those extroverted people are a little more inclined to be influenced by other people, which includes their reading list. Ergo, if everyone's reading a book, someone in the city with their library, they most likely are reading that book as well. Therefore, they probably only have the more popular books. Whereas when you go out in the country, you have people that are getting very niche books, if you will. You're getting books about farming, about gardening, about lumber, about all these things, which are a lot more niche, a lot more crafty things, and those are by and large worth a whole lot more. In addition to that, you also do have all the other people who do still have very valuable books. So remember what I said about the people that have very brain-intensive books and careers. So the people that I find normally have the best books for that are going to be more the people that are, honestly, librarians have a lot of really good ones. Additionally, you have lawyers can be hit and miss, but usually I find lawyers are pretty good for the books that they have, so I understand those people are probably in the city as well. That's okay. Bear with me. Additionally, you have some doctors. A lot of doctors don't go back and read books at home, but some of them definitely do. Entrepreneurs, though, like we are talking the ones that actually went out and started their own businesses and then continued building the businesses for the rest of their lives, those I find have some of the absolute best books. They have tons of biographies. They are the people that never quit learning through their entire lives. Those are the people you really want to hit with your shopping for books, for your estate sales, all that sort of stuff. But beyond that, there's quite a few really good engineering books. Engineers, they can have a whole selection of really, really valuable books. But I find a lot of the younger engineering books for younger engineers, it's not as valuable because most of them only have the textbook side of things. Whereas when you are going for books that are for engineers that honestly, I would say engineers that graduated between the 40s and 60s at the absolute latest. But personally, I like the 40s and earlier. People that graduated for engineering before that, the books they have are, by and large, from what I've seen, a whole lot more valuable than the books that you would get for someone who just graduated 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, something like that. And that's simply because a lot of those people, they sort of stick more with the textbook side of things, whereas the older engineers, they would find their niche that really helped them in their own business, and sometimes those niche down books are worth a whole lot more. However, that's not really the point of this video. I know I'm going to get complaints. Caleb, you're rambling. I don't give a rip. But with that said, what are we going to do with the whole rural side of things? I already mentioned about how the rural books, you have a lot more niche stuff, which are by and large worth a whole lot more. But let me also add, in the city, people have so many things to keep them distracted from reading. In the country, it's not that way whatsoever. So when I go to the country and I check out all these estate sales, a normal person in the city, guys, I mentioned this already, has 10 to, what did I say, 20 or was it 50 books, and those were all novels. In the country, let me tell you folks, I've been to some country estate sales, and I'm not just looking at like 10 bucks, 20 bucks, 40 bucks, 100 bucks. I've seen places, I've been in places, I bought books from places that had tens of thousands of books in people's personal libraries, and I've only ever seen those in the country with the exception of one time in Portland, and even then I wouldn't say the person had tens of thousands. They probably just had tops of like 1,000 books, which I know is pretty impressive, but when you look at some of the other things that I've seen, it's like, it doesn't really hold a candle to what I've seen elsewhere. So with that said, the country estate sales are some of the absolute best ones that I found. In addition to that, country Friends of the Library sales, again, some of the best ones I've been to. I had the misfortune of going to the Friends of the Library sale in Portland. That thing was busy as everything. There was tons of people, there was terrible prices, and parking was a nightmare. I was like, never doing this again. Meanwhile, for me, I've mentioned this one before in the past, guys, Prineville, Oregon, one of my absolute favorite Friends of the Library sales. I haven't been for a hot minute. I need to get going back to that one, but that one's one of my favorites. And my next favorite is Pendleton, Oregon, which is, so the Prineville one, let's just say has 10,000 books. I'm exaggerating a little bit for that one. It might be more like 5, but somewhere in there. Pendleton one, guys, it's on their, it's not their fairgrounds, something along those lines, but like, I think it's their convention center down there, but they run the fair through it. They have an oversized gym that they have for their indoor events. They fill the entire building with books. I mean, I've never seen so many books at a Friends of the Library sale like laid out like that. It was the absolute best one I've ever been to. So again, that's a rural one. Another, I guess I couldn't call it rural, but some of my other ones that I've been to, Tri-Cities, it's the city, but it's in the middle of country land. Tri-Cities in Washington, though, another one of the absolute best ones I've been to. Klamath Falls, Oregon, another one that I adored going to that I had a whole lot of luck with. But in addition to that, I have all these estate sales. A lot of my best estate sales towns are all rural, and they are all within a few hours of actually where I've been looking for properties for several years now, as I just sort of waited for the property market to turn over. I know I've shared in my economic update videos, guys, that yeah, here's this with the economy, this and this and this. Things are not looking good. It's going to turn down. Well, a lot of people are probably thinking, oh no, it's only good from here. Well, I can't help you. But for those of us that have our eyes open, are actually paying attention to things, you can see that the economy's not firing on all 12 cylinders. If you're asking me, I'd say we're firing maybe on 8. But I'd say it's a little more... I'm not actually going to throw out a number, but yeah, it's not as good as what people might want you to think, and especially what the government wants you to think. But let's face it, the government likes lying all the time, and they don't give a rip about us. But with that said, I've been watching the property market for a few years now. Ever since I started this business, honestly, guys, I found my best places to source, which again, were all in Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington, Northern California also had some good ones. But by just moving myself from expensive city area to the cheaper country area, I was able to be like, okay, so it's actually closer to some of my best places, and I don't have to deal with the traffic, don't have to deal with the high costs, don't have to deal with so many expensive things that you get in the city. Rural life can be a whole lot cheaper. Of course, I know there are other issues, there's other struggles, but by and large, based on the economics that I've been watching, all these sorts of things, it definitely seems to pay to be rural, especially if you're running your business like me. In addition to all of that, so again, guys, I'm talking about going to Eastern Oregon for myself. And Eastern Oregon, if I do go there, I'm opening up myself to a whole lot of more estate sales, Friends of the Library sales, that sort of thing, because I'm getting closer to towns like Boise and Tri-Cities and ones like that. Whereas where I live right now, yeah, I have an opportunity to go to Portland. If I want to drive a chunk, I can go to Salem, and Salem's not too far, but I can go there. Everything in between. I can go a little bit further to Eugene, and Eugene, that's about the same amount of drive as it'd be for me to move to some of the places in Eastern Oregon and go to anywhere in this huge circle of things. As I've shared in other videos, guys, I'm willing to drive, in some cases, like up to 8 hours to go get books. I've done that several times. So the thought of spending those 8 hours to drive through a whole bunch of cities, having to hit a couple of estate sales on the way and overpay for all those books, or I could go out to the middle of nowhere and buy those same sorts of books, or potentially even more valuable books, usually more valuable of books, for a whole lot less money. And that, it just makes a whole lot more sense to do that. And in addition to that, by moving out to the middle of nowhere, those Friends of the Library sales, there's no other booksellers, book resellers going through those places. I am finding lots of virgin ground with amazing finds for me. In addition to that, so many other things. However, that's all that for my business. Let's address a few other things. So I mentioned already about the cost of properties, all that sort of stuff. So guys, there are properties for sale in the middle of nowhere that you can buy dozens of acres, hundreds of acres, thousands of acres for the same price as buying a pretty rowdy house in California. Let's see, would I rather live in the slums of California? In fact, I just got shanked thinking about it. Or would I rather live in the middle of nowhere surrounded by just my own land and people I actually enjoy? That's a hard sale right there. Obviously, guys, I am a little jaded on this. Obviously, I may or may not have already made up my mind on what I'm going to be doing. But for me, I've been looking at all these things and it's like, wow, I could, for the same cost of buying the land, renting the land, whatever I do with the land here, and potentially building a structure here, I could do 10 to 100 times more out in the sticks. Maybe 100 times is a little excessive, but guys, legitimately, I'm talking about, I've seen properties, I've looked at properties, I've considered properties that are commercial real estate, and they're not huge lots, just a few thousand square foot lots. Some of them already have a couple buildings on them, and I'm talking about getting these properties for as little as a few $100s for the ones without buildings, or I think I saw a few for like $6,000 that had some buildings on them for a few thousand square feet and a few thousand square foot lot for a few $1,000s. It's like, that's a ready-made business basically for me, because I only need storage space, I only need electricity, I only need internet. I mean, it'd be nice to have water and sewage as well, so I could go to the bathroom when I'm at work, but that's all I really need to do this business. And to think that I can do all of that for like $6,000 ready-made, and then buy a house in that same town. Well, in that same town there were houses for sale that were move-in ready for someone that was actually willing to do some renovations on a house for $70,000. $70,000 plus $6,000, well, let's just round up. Let's call that $80,000 total, because there's closing costs. Let's call it $80,000. Meanwhile, to start that same sort of business, if I was in downtown Portland, $800,000 wouldn't even touch it. So that's 10 times. Definitely wouldn't work. Let's just say I'm doing this math in downtown Portland. So to buy that same house is probably $1.2 million. Just as slummy, just as terrible. It's pretty pathetic over there, guys. I'm gonna have someone complain. Let's call it just $800,000 for that house. To then get the commercial real estate for the same thing, that easily would be at least $200,000. So let's just call it $1 million, as opposed to the otherwise $80,000 I could be spending. So at the very least, it is a 10 times less to do that same business model in rural Oregon. In the case of where I'm looking, that's rural Oregon. There are other rural areas all across the country that of course have different prices. Some are more, a whole lot of them are a whole lot less, and it's basically up to you guys to figure things out from there, how you guys want to do the calculus. With all that said though, let me just hit on one more thing. We all know people in the city who are holding down 1 job, 2 jobs. I know of some people that are doing 3 jobs, just trying to make sure the ends meet. Most of these people are also having a couple of roommates so they can actually, stay alive. Just minor things like staying alive. In the country, have you guys driven to the country any time recently? There are so many small businesses that are closed. Like, I've seen some guys that are only open 1 day a week. And those people are making their living with that 1 day a week business, because the cost of living is just, it doesn't even hold a candle to what it is in the city. I mean, we are talking people getting by on 1 day of work on some of these towns. Of course, that's the exception, not the norm. By and large, I see a lot of other places that are closed, let's say 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and then they can always take a day off for fishing, because they know they don't really need all that extra money to pay for $3,000 rent in downtown Portland. Of course, fortunately, with the market crashing like it is, Portland rent is going down a whole lot. That's really nice for a lot of people that are doing that. Personally, for me, I have no interest in renting. I would like to just own. I'd like to just buy stuff outright as well, but I'm weird like that. But just the cost of living side of things, guys, it could be a whole lot simpler and a whole lot easier for a lot of people to just move to the country. And again, I already mentioned the thing about Portland rent, but guys, there are legitimate houses for sale where I'm looking for properties. A good size house, let's say 2,000 square feet, but there are of course ones that are like 1,200 and going to a little over 2,000 square feet. Legitimately, for those houses, it's between, I've seen some as low as like $600, but average is about $800 for rent a month. Or you could pay $1,000 more for the privilege of living in a smog-filled city with a whole lot of crime. Your guys' choice. But I'm sure there's going to be some other people who are like, well, this is just my side business. I only do my book selling on the side. I need a real job. Well, folks, a lot of rural towns have seen huge declines in their populations. Especially, I've seen in a lot of the properties I've been looking at, a lot of the towns I've looked at, I've seen a huge decline in a lot of these places, especially since about the 80s, and it's just crashed since then. In fact, there's one property that I'm looking at in a particular town, and that town went from, I believe it was an 800 population at the peak in the 70s or 80s, and now it's about 200 population. That means there's a whole lot of houses that got abandoned. That means there's a whole lot of properties that basically got abandoned. That means there's a whole lot of opportunity there. However, there's a lot of jobs that are still around even though the people are not there. There is always certain jobs that need to continue being done, and since those towns saw population declines as much as they did, there's actually a whole lot, an ungodly number of open jobs in a lot of these places. In fact, I was in one town, I've mentioned this town before, guys, Lakeview. Awesome town, love that town, really want to move there, long term at least. But going to that town, I was like, oh, what kind of jobs are here? Pull it up, I'm like, oh wow, anyone who has at least room temperature IQ, and anyone that's willing to actually sweat more than one thimbleful in a lifetime can get a job that pays really well. And those jobs that pay really well out there, it's like, wow, if you're frugal with your money, you could actually put together a property empire out there and get all this passive income from just properties. There's so many opportunities. However, again, you have to be willing to actually work, which I know is a big turnoff for a lot of dirtbags these days that are just lazy farts. And again, I'm going to offend people in this video. I'm okay with that. I don't give a rip. It's my channel. In your face. Complain all you want. But folks, it was actually funny. I took my dad down there and we were chatting with some people, and he was like, oh yeah, so what kind of jobs are down here? And one of the locals was like, oh yeah, any job you want basically, so long as you're not afraid of a little work. Like, that is basically the status quo out in the sticks. It's not dumb desk jobs that you can complain the rest of your days and somehow get paid for. It's stuff that you actually need to build things and contribute to society with. That's a big thing for when you live out in the sticks. There are real jobs for a real economy, not just a service economy or online economy. Of course, you could still do those remote jobs, all that sort of stuff, but let's face it, there's a lot more reward in life to actually building stuff with your hands. In fact, we have two hands for a reason. Maybe it's so we can actually build something, not just type on a computer the rest of our days. I don't think man was made to do that one. But with that said, again, guys, for the Lakeview side of things, I was just looking at all these jobs for Lakeview, and like, they have a big lumberyard there, and the listings of lumberyard jobs was like the size of Nantucket. It's just like, wow, that's really dope. And then you see a few of the other things. There's a whole lot of forestry service things. There's a whole lot of BLM things, a bunch of hospital, doctors, school things, like job openings out of the wazoo. And it's just because so many people, they might grow up there, but then they leave, which means they left open jobs for folks like us who are willing to drive a little bit, have a little bit of fun, and get out of the city. Gives us opportunities. Of course, not every small town is meant for everyone. Your mileage may vary, all that sort of stuff, but it's really up to you guys to do things how you want and what you sort of want to do, that sort of thing. For me, with the antique book business, going to the middle of nowhere is the absolute best thing that I can do, especially with all the other businesses I am doing and am hoping to start. Going to the middle of nowhere is the absolute best thing I can do. You guys, you might need to stay in the city, I don't know. I'm sort of doing this video because I had enough people complain at me in my comment section and in a few emails being like, how dare you assume that I should move out of downtown Seattle to start this business? I could never. That was actually a comment I got on someone complaining about how they need to be able to afford to do the antique book business in downtown Seattle with just a few hours a week. And I'm sitting here like, you don't understand how money works, or math, huh? I'm sure kindergarten was really hard for you. That's why you dropped out then, huh, pal? I'm surprised you were able to type this comment out. Of course, I wasn't mass savage to him in real life. I'd say it to his face if I saw him in real life, let's be honest, because the guy probably was just a dirtbag. But with that said, so many people, they will complain all day long. I know I already mentioned that about those keyboard warriors. They'll complain all day long, but they aren't willing to actually go out of their comfort zone and go rural, young man. So many of these people, they want their riches, they want their discovery, they want their adventure, but they want it all in the comfort of their own home. They don't want to actually take the risk and even visit a small town to see if that small town could be a good match for them. For me, guys, I checked out several small towns. I was like, oh, here's one that I've enjoyed in the past, went there, drove around, and I was just like, it doesn't feel like it'd be a great hometown for me. Whereas this one here, this one is me 110%. I love this. That sort of thing. You guys have to drive around a little bit. I'm sure you guys, if you guys have been following along for a while, you've checked out a few other channels on the YouTube platform, and if you've been following along, I don't know if it's been announced publicly, so I can't say any names, but there are other resellers who are not staying in their same city. They are moving to different cities because of the opportunities in those cities, but particularly because those cities are in the middle of everything for them. It's the center of it all, if you will. For me, as I've mentioned already, I'm going to Eastern Oregon. I looked at Central Eastern Oregon many times because that was like the middle of it all for so much of my stuff, but then I started sort of pushing things southwards because I was like, okay, the best Friends of Library sales I've been to, yeah, there was one up in Lakewood, Washington. I don't see myself doing that one a whole lot. The one in Tri-Cities, yeah, I could do that one again, but pretty easy drive for that. But Redding, California, that one was really fantastic for me. Redmond, Oregon, fan-stinking-tastic for me. Prineville, amazing. And Klamath Falls, Lakeview had pretty good stuff. I mean, all those areas, it's like, if I just justify down a little bit, yeah, I could totally work with that. And from there, checked out some towns. Was like, okay, I love this town, this town, this town, this town, and this town. This one, it's not everything I sort of remembered, so yeah, he's off the list. And sort of played with that sort of thing. And I know it does sound like I'm rambling, but I'm just trying to address all the things that a lot of you guys might be thinking, might be wondering about moving out for yourselves. Of course, this is all hypothetical, let's just say, because I haven't gone out and done it myself. I will be doing it all myself, but I haven't done it just yet. But if you guys would like to see the results of me going out to the middle of nowhere and starting everything from scratch, in fact, guys, I'm going so middle of nowhere that I'm going to have to be building my own electric grid for myself, my own everything. Fortunately, I guess I can share this with you guys. No telling anyone, and no stealing my property, but I'm actually checking out some properties that have some springs on them as well. So if rain catchment isn't enough, I can actually tap into some spring water as well, which is really nice. Of course, there's other properties with some other water that I could get into if I do all the permitting side of things, but there's a lot of opportunity for those of us that are willing to branch out a little bit and do stuff we might not be comfortable with. So if you guys do want to follow along with that, that is the long-term goal. I will be sharing a good amount about that whole endeavor because, let's face it, the antique book business, that's coming with me. This is mine. I enjoy it. It's one of my favorite things. I love the antique books. So with that said and done, I hope this video was helpful. I hope the senseless rambling of a madman of Caleb here wasn't too much for you. I hope that the rambling sort of got you guys' brain juices going a little bit, because it's not just a cut and dry, yeah, just move to the middle of nowhere, you'll be fine. Oh, sorry. You'll be fine. Nothing will be bad. You do need to do some of that thinking ahead of time. You need to consider. You need to chase every rabbit, kick every dog, and you need to make sure that you sort of know what you're getting into. Best thing that you could do is to dip your toe in the water, maybe offer to help some people on different construction jobs or farm jobs or something like that. If that's something you were sort of considering doing it, do it for free for someone for a little bit, see if you like it, and from then sort of decide if that's the lifestyle you want to do. It's not for everyone. I'm totally okay with this saying that, but for me, the city life is not for me. So again, I hope this video was helpful. I hope it did get your brain juices going. If it did, please be sure to drop a like. You guys can subscribe as well if you guys do want to stick around, because there's a lot more to this life than just this. And check out one of my other videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.